What if I told you that one of the most beloved motorcycle brands once created a bike so controversial that loyal customers literally gathered outside dealerships to protest? That actually happened, and it gets worse. Some of these motorcycles were so problematic they triggered lawsuits, government investigations, and even forced entire companies into bankruptcy. Think about this. A manufacturer spent millions developing what they called the future of motorcycling, only to watch riders return the bikes in such numbers that dealers begged the factory to stop production. These aren't just marketing failures or bikes that didn't sell well. These are machines that destroyed legacies, ended careers, and in some cases, changed how motorcycles are regulated forever. In this video, I'm counting down the 10 most controversial motorcycles ever made, from number 10 to number 1. And here's what makes this different from every other list you've seen. I'm not talking about bikes that were just ugly or unpopular. Every single motorcycle on this list sparked genuine outrage, divided the riding community, or caused real financial disasters. Number 1 on this list was so hated that the company had to completely redesign their next model just to win back angry customers, even though the controversial bike actually won championships. Stick around because by the end, you'll understand why passion and engineering don't always create success. And sometimes the most advanced motorcycle is also the biggest failure. Number 10. Harley-Davidson Street 500, 2014 to 2020. Let's start with a bike that committed the unforgivable sin in Harley-Davidson's world. It wasn't made in America. The Street 500 featured a 494cc liquid-cooled engine, producing just 34 horsepower, which already made traditional Harley riders suspicious. But the real controversy erupted when customers learned their American motorcycle was actually manufactured in India at Harley's facility in Buell. Harley positioned the Street 500 as an entry-level bike to attract younger riders in international markets. The base price started around $6,800, making it the cheapest Harley you could buy. That affordability came at a cost that had nothing to do with money. Harley loyalists felt betrayed. Online forums exploded with anger. Longtime customers argued that a Harley built outside Milwaukee wasn't a real Harley at all. The bike itself performed adequately for what it was designed to do. The 494cc Revolution X engine was reliable, the handling was predictable, and the weight of about 490 pounds made it manageable for new riders. Urban commuters appreciated its maneuverability in traffic, but traditional Harley customers weren't interested in practicality or affordability. They wanted heritage, American craftsmanship, and the prestige that came with owning a Milwaukee-built machine. Critics pointed out that the Street 500 didn't sound like a Harley, didn't look like a Harley, and according to them, didn't have the soul of a Harley. The liquid cooling made it run quieter and more efficiently than air-cooled models, but that efficiency eliminated the distinctive engine note that defined the brand. Some dealers reported that customers who came to look at the Street 500 walked out when they learned where it was built. The controversy extended beyond nationalism. Experienced riders questioned whether Harley was diluting their brand by chasing market share instead of maintaining exclusivity. The Street 500 was lighter, more fuel efficient, and easier to ride than traditional Harleys, but those advantages meant nothing to customers who valued tradition over innovation. International sales were stronger than domestic numbers, which only reinforced the perception that this wasn't a real American Harley. The bike found success in markets like India and Southeast Asia, where the combination of Harley branding and affordable pricing made sense. But in the United States, the Street 500 remained a controversial outlier that never gained acceptance from the core customer base. Harley discontinued the Street line in 2020, partly due to slow sales and partly because the company was refocusing on their traditional customer base. The Street 500 taught Harley that their brand identity couldn't be compromised without consequences, even when the business case made perfect sense. Number 9. Honda DN01 2008 to 2010. Honda's DN01 looked like a concept bike that accidentally made it to production. This 698cc V-twin cruiser produced 58 horsepower and featured an automatic transmission that eliminated both the clutch lever and the gear shifter. Honda called it a revolutionary approach to motorcycling. Traditional riders called it an abomination. The controversy started with the design. The DN01 featured bodywork that completely enclosed the rear wheel, a low-slung riding position that put riders almost parallel to the ground, and styling that looked more spaceship than motorcycle. At around $15,000, it was expensive for a bike that delivered modest performance and confused everyone who looked at it. Honda developed the DN01's human-friendly transmission, or HFT, to make riding more accessible to people intimidated by manual transmissions. The system used a combination of hydraulic torque converter and automatic shifting to eliminate clutch operation entirely. Honda engineers believed this would attract new riders who wanted the freedom of motorcycling without the complexity of traditional controls. The motorcycle community responded with immediate skepticism. Experienced riders argued that operating a clutch and shifter was fundamental to the riding experience. Removing those elements didn't make motorcycling easier, it made it less authentic. Online forums filled with comments questioning whether the DN01 was actually a motorcycle or just a two-wheeled scooter pretending to be something more. Performance numbers revealed the DN01's compromises. The bike weighed about 600 pounds, making it heavy for its power output. The automatic transmission was smooth in operation but robbed the engine of direct connection to the road. Acceleration was adequate but unexciting. Top speed was limited to around 110 miles per hour, which was respectable but not competitive with other bikes in its price range. Honda marketed the DN01 as a premium urban cruiser for sophisticated riders who valued comfort and technology over raw performance. The problem was that sophisticated urban riders with $15,000 to spend had dozens of better options. The DN01 was too weird for traditional cruiser buyers, too slow for sport bike enthusiasts, and too expensive for casual riders. Dealers struggled to explain what the DN01 was supposed to be. Was it a cruiser? A touring bike? A commuter? Honda's marketing materials emphasized innovation and exclusivity, but that messaging didn't translate into sales. Most showrooms kept a DN01 as a conversation piece rather than expecting to actually sell it. The bike found a small cult following among riders who appreciated its uniqueness and comfort. Owners praised the riding position for long-distance comfort, the automatic transmission for city riding, and the attention the unusual styling attracted. But that cult following numbered in the hundreds, not the thousands, Honda needed to justify continued production. Production ended after just 2 years with total sales estimated at fewer than 3,000 units worldwide. The DN01 became a cautionary tale about innovation that arrives without a clear target audience. Honda had created something genuinely different, but different doesn't always mean desirable. Number 8. Kawasaki Ninja H2, 2015 to present. The H2 is controversial? It's a supercharged superbike that produces over 300 horsepower in its top configuration. What's controversial about that? Everything, according to safety advocates and insurance companies. The H2 represents the return of the horsepower wars that the industry spent decades trying to end. The standard H2 produces 200 horsepower, while the track-only H2R generates over 310 horsepower with ram air effect. That's more power than most race bikes, and substantially more than any production motorcycle needs on public roads. The controversy isn't about whether Kawasaki could build such a machine, it's about whether they should have. Prices started around $30,000 for the base H2, climbing to over $55,000 for the limited edition models. Insurance companies took one look at the specifications and either refused coverage or charged premium rates that could exceed $5,000 annually for experienced riders. Young riders often couldn't get insurance at any price. Safety advocates argued that the H2 was irresponsible engineering. A motorcycle capable of exceeding 200 miles per hour had no place on public roads where speed limits topped out at 85 miles per hour in the most permissive jurisdictions. The supercharger whine became the sound of everything wrong with modern sport bike culture. More power, less sense, and complete disregard for practical limitations. Kawasaki's marketing emphasized the H2's exotic technology. The supercharged engine used a centrifugal compressor that spun at over 130,000 RPM. The intake charged to over 20 psi of boost pressure. The resulting power delivery was smooth but overwhelming, requiring electronic intervention through traction control, wheelie control, and launch control systems. Without those electronic aids, the H2 would be virtually unrideable for most owners. The motorcycle press was divided. Some journalists praised Kawasaki for pushing boundaries and creating something genuinely special. Others questioned the ethics of selling such extreme performance to the general public. Track tests revealed acceleration that exceeded most supercars. 0 to 60 happened in under 3 seconds. Quarter-mile times dipped below 10 seconds. Top speed was electronically limited to 186 miles per hour, honoring the gentleman's agreement that started with the Hayabusa. But here's what makes the H2 truly controversial. Despite all the power and all the technology, it's actually one of the more manageable superbikes to ride at normal speeds. The electronics work so well that the H2 can be docile in city traffic and apocalyptic on track. That accessibility makes it more dangerous, not less, according to critics. A bike this powerful should require exceptional skill to operate, not just a credit card and a motorcycle endorsement. Sales have been stronger than skeptics predicted. Kawasaki produces limited numbers annually, maintaining exclusivity and resale values. The H2 has become a collectible motorcycle while still being actively produced. Owners often keep them garaged as investments rather than riding them regularly. The H2 reignited debates about manufacturer responsibility. Should companies build motorcycles with performance that exceeds what most riders can safely use? Should governments regulate power-to-weight ratios? Should insurance companies refuse coverage for extreme machines? These questions don't have easy answers, and the H2 forced the industry to confront them again. Number 7. Harley-Davidson LiveWire 2019 to present. If the Street 500 made traditional Harley customers uncomfortable, the LiveWire made them furious. An electric Harley-Davidson with no exhaust note, no vibration, and no connection to 120 years of internal combustion heritage. The controversy started before the first bike was delivered. Harley developed the LiveWire as their entry into electric motorcycles, positioning it as a premium product with premium pricing. The base price started at $29,799, making it one of the most expensive electric motorcycles available. For comparison, you could buy 2 traditional Harley touring bikes for the same money. The LiveWire's electric motor produced 105 horsepower and 86 pound-feet of torque, available instantly from 0 RPM. Performance was impressive. 0 to 60 happened in 3 seconds. Top speed was limited to 110 miles per hour. The bike weighed about 550 pounds and offered a claimed range of 146 miles in city riding, dropping to around 95 miles in combined conditions. Traditional Harley customers were outraged. The distinctive Harley exhaust note, that potato-potato rumble that defined the brand, was gone, replaced by an electric whine that sounded more like a vacuum cleaner than a motorcycle. The lack of a clutch and gearbox eliminated rider involvement. No shifting, no clutch control, just twist the throttle and go. Online forums exploded with anger. Longtime Harley owners felt betrayed again, but this time the controversy was deeper than the Street 500. At least that bike had an internal combustion engine. The LiveWire represented something more threatening, the end of everything Harley traditionally stood for. Harley's CEO defended the decision, arguing that the company needed to evolve to survive. Young riders weren't as interested in traditional motorcycles. Environmental regulations were tightening globally. Electric vehicles represented the future whether enthusiasts liked it or not. The LiveWire was Harley's attempt to stay relevant in a changing market. Critics questioned every aspect of the bike. The range was inadequate for touring. The charging time was too long for spontaneous rides. The price was absurd compared to gasoline alternatives. The styling, while aggressive, didn't feel distinctly Harley. And most fundamentally, an electric Harley eliminated the sensory experience that defined motorcycle riding. Early adopters discovered a different kind of controversy. The LiveWire was actually fun to ride. The instant torque delivery provided thrilling acceleration. The low center of gravity improved handling. The lack of engine heat made summer riding comfortable. The futuristic styling attracted positive attention. But admitting you enjoyed the LiveWire meant risking expulsion from traditional Harley culture. Sales were predictably slow. Harley eventually spun off the LiveWire into a separate brand, distancing it from the core motorcycle lineup. That decision acknowledged what everyone already knew. Electric motorcycles and traditional Harley heritage couldn't coexist under the same badge without controversy. The LiveWire debate continues today. Is Harley-Davidson abandoning their core customers or adapting to survive? Should legendary brands maintain tradition or embrace change? Can an electric motorcycle capture the soul of motorcycling? Or does it fundamentally miss the point? The LiveWire forced these conversations, and the answers vary depending on who you ask. Number 6. Buell 1125R 2008 to 2009. Eric Buell spent decades trying to prove that American sport bikes could compete with Japanese rivals. The 1125R was supposed to be his masterpiece. Instead, it became his swan song. This sub 125cc V-twin produced 146 horsepower and featured innovative engineering like a fuel and frame design and underslung exhaust. It should have been revolutionary. It was barely noticed. The controversy wasn't about the motorcycle itself. The 1120R was actually good. The Rotax-sourced engine delivered strong power across the rev range. The handling was sharp. The braking system featured Buell's signature perimeter rotor design. Performance matched or exceeded Japanese sport bikes costing similar money. But none of that mattered because Buell was owned by Harley-Davidson, and Harley was losing money. The financial crisis of 2008 hit Harley hard. Motorcycle sales collapsed across all segments. Harley needed to cut costs and refocus on their core business. Buell represented everything Harley wasn't: high revving engines, aggressive styling, and appeal to younger riders who wanted performance over heritage. When Harley announced they were discontinuing Buell entirely in October 2009, the motorcycle community erupted. Eric Buell had spent over 25 years developing American sport bikes. He'd pioneered innovative designs that challenged conventional thinking. The 1125R represented the culmination of that work, incorporating lessons learned from decades of racing and development. Harley's decision to kill Buell felt like corporate murder to enthusiasts who appreciated what Eric Buell had accomplished. The 1125R's production run lasted barely a year. Dealers were left with inventory they couldn't sell because customers knew the brand was dying. Warranty support became questionable. Parts availability became a concern. Owners watched their bikes lose value overnight as Buell's future evaporated. The controversy extended beyond business decisions. Many observers believed Harley never fully supported Buell despite owning the company. Marketing budgets were limited. Dealer networks were incomplete. Development resources were constrained. Buell was expected to compete with Japanese manufacturers while operating on a fraction of their budget. Eric Buell himself was devastated. In interviews after the shutdown, he spoke about the potential that was never realized. The 1125R was supposed to launch a new generation of American sport bikes. Instead, it became the final chapter in a story that ended prematurely. The 1125R taught the industry a harsh lesson about corporate ownership and brand identity. Sometimes the best engineering isn't enough to overcome business realities. Sometimes innovation gets sacrificed for short-term financial survival. And sometimes controversial doesn't mean bad. It just means doomed by circumstances beyond the motorcycle's control. Number 5. Aprilia RSV4, 2009 to present weight. How is a race-winning superbike controversial? Because it came from Aprilia, not Japan. The RSV4's 1000cc V4 engine produced between 180 and 220 horsepower depending on the model, featuring electronics that were years ahead of competitors. It dominated world superbike racing, winning multiple championships. But convincing customers to buy Italian over Japanese required overcoming decades of reliability concerns and dealer network limitations. The controversy centered on trust. Aprilia's reputation for exotic but temperamental motorcycles preceded the RSV4. Previous models had suffered from electrical problems, unreliable components, and expensive maintenance requirements. The RSV4 promised to be different, but buyers remained skeptical. Why risk $20,000 or more on an Italian motorcycle when proven Japanese alternatives cost less and offered better dealer support? Early RSV4 models validated those concerns. Owners reported electrical issues, software glitches, and mechanical problems that required dealer intervention. Aprilia issued multiple recalls for clutch problems, fuel system issues, and electronic malfunctions. Each recall reinforced the perception that Italian motorcycles were for track days and collector garages, not daily riding. But here's where it gets complicated. The RSV4 was objectively superior to many competitors in performance and handling. Track comparisons consistently showed the Aprilia matching or beating Japanese superbikes. The V4 engine delivered power smoothly across the entire rev range. The chassis was race-proven. The electronics were sophisticated before that sophistication became standard. Motorcycle journalists loved the RSV4. Every magazine test resulted in praise for the handling, the power delivery, and the pure racing heritage. But loving a motorcycle in a professional test is different from trusting it as a personal purchase. The gap between editorial enthusiasm and customer skepticism defined the RSV4's controversy. Aprilia struggled to overcome perception problems. They improved quality control, extended warranties, and expanded dealer networks. Later model years were significantly more reliable than early versions, but reputation damage is harder to fix than mechanical problems. Once a brand is labeled unreliable, earning back trust takes years. The RSV4 attracted a dedicated following of riders who valued performance over concerns about reliability. These owners accepted the risk in exchange for the reward of riding something special. They became evangelists for the brand, defending Aprilia against critics and promoting the RSV4's capabilities. But that cult following never expanded into mainstream acceptance. Sales numbers reflected the controversy. The RSV4 sold well in Europe, where Aprilia had stronger brand recognition and better dealer support. But in the United States, sales remained modest compared to Japanese competitors. American riders wanted proven reliability and widespread parts availability. The RSV4 offered racing pedigree and exotic appeal, which wasn't enough to overcome concerns about long-term ownership. The controversy continues today. Is the RSV4 an underappreciated masterpiece, or a maintenance-intensive exotic that requires more commitment than most riders want to make? The answer depends on priorities. If absolute performance matters most, the RSV deserves consideration. If reliability and convenience are priorities, Japanese alternatives make more sense. Number 4. Confederate Wraith 2008 to 2013. Confederate motorcycles built machines that challenged everything about conventional motorcycle design. The Wraith featured a 1.996cc V-twin, producing a 150 horsepower wrapped in bodywork that looked like alien technology. Each bike was hand-built in Louisiana with exotic materials and custom components. Production was limited to around 13 units per year. The base price started at $113,000. Yes, you read that correctly. $113,000 for a motorcycle. That price tag sparked immediate controversy. Critics argued that no motorcycle, regardless of exclusivity or craftsmanship, justified six-figure pricing. Confederate's response was simple. They weren't building motorcycles. They were creating rolling art installations that happened to be rideable. The Wraith's construction proved that point. The frame was machined from billet aluminum. The bodywork was carbon fiber. The wheels were forged from aircraft-grade aluminum. Every component was custom designed and manufactured specifically for each bike. Confederate didn't buy parts from suppliers. They made everything in-house to ensure quality and exclusivity. But here's what made the Wraith truly controversial. It wasn't particularly good at being a motorcycle. The riding position was uncomfortable for longer distances. The handling was adequate but not exceptional. The brakes were sufficient but not outstanding. The power delivery was strong but not overwhelming. Confederate had prioritized aesthetics over performance, art over engineering. Owners didn't care. They weren't buying transportation or even performance. They were buying exclusivity, craftsmanship, and conversation pieces. The Wraith was meant to be displayed and admired, occasionally ridden, and always unique. Confederate's customers understood that value isn't always measured in horsepower or lap times. The motorcycle community was divided. Some appreciated Confederate's commitment to artistry and individual expression. Others dismissed the company as overpriced pretension targeting wealthy buyers who cared more about status than riding. Both perspectives had merit, which made the controversy impossible to resolve. Confederate eventually rebranded as Combat Motors, changed their design direction, and continued producing ultra-exclusive motorcycles. The Wraith remained controversial as an example of how far motorcycle pricing could stretch when the target market valued exclusivity above all else. The real question wasn't whether the Wraith was worth $113,000. The real question was whether extreme exclusivity and artistic vision could coexist with traditional motorcycle values. Confederate proved it could, even if most riders never understood why anyone would want to. Number 3. Honda Goldwing FS6B 2013 to 2016. Honda took their flagship touring motorcycle, the Goldwing, and stripped away the touring features. No trunk, no passenger backrest, no full fairings. What remained was 800 pounds of motorcycle that nobody wanted. The F6B was supposed to be a stripped-down, blacked-out cruiser version of the Goldwing. Instead, it became a lesson in how removing features doesn't create a new market segment. The F6B used the same 1,832cc flat-six engine as the standard Goldwing, producing 118 horsepower and 123 pound-feet of torque. But instead of the full touring package, buyers got minimal bodywork, a solo seat setup, and significantly less storage capacity. Honda positioned it as a power cruiser for riders who wanted Goldwing smoothness without the touring bulk. The controversy was immediate and predictable. Traditional Goldwing owners had no interest in a stripped-down version. They bought Goldwing specifically for the touring capabilities, the comfort, and the luxury features. Removing those elements eliminated the entire reason to choose a Goldwing. Cruiser buyers looked at the F6B's weight and questioned why anyone would want 800 pounds of motorcycle without the practicality to justify that mass. The price made matters worse. The F6B started around $23,000, just $4,000 less than a fully equipped Goldwing. Buyers could spend slightly more and get a complete touring package, or they could save slightly and get a true cruiser that weighed 200 pounds less. The F6B occupied an awkward middle ground that satisfied neither group. Honda's marketing emphasized the F6B's unique styling and stripped-down attitude. Print ads showed the bike in aggressive poses with taglines about rejecting convention, but the marketing couldn't overcome the fundamental problem. The F6B was a solution searching for a problem that didn't exist. Dealers struggled to move inventory. The bikes sat on showroom floors for months. Honda offered incentives, but even discounts couldn't create demand for a product that nobody asked for. Sales were so disappointing that Honda quietly discontinued the F6B after just 3 model years. The few riders who bought F6Bs generally liked them. The flat-six engine was smooth and torquey. The handling was surprisingly good for such a heavy bike. The blacked-out styling had aggressive appeal. But those positive attributes couldn't overcome the fact that the F6B made no sense in Honda's lineup or the broader motorcycle market. The F6B taught Honda a lesson about product planning. Removing features from an existing model doesn't automatically create a new market segment. Sometimes less isn't more. Sometimes it's just less. The controversy wasn't about quality or performance. It was about purpose. Nobody could explain who the F6B was built for because Honda apparently couldn't either. Number 2. MV Agusta F4, 1999 to present. The F4 isn't controversial because it's bad. It's controversial because it's been breaking down for 25 years and people keep buying them anyway. This Italian superbike features a 998cc to 1000cc inline 4, producing between 166 and 212 horsepower depending on the model. It's gorgeous, it's fast, and it's almost comically unreliable. MV Agusta's reputation for mechanical problems is legendary. Electrical issues plague multiple model years. Clutch problems require frequent attention. Cooling system failures leave riders stranded. Sensor malfunctions trigger false warnings. And yet, the F4 continues selling to customers who knowingly accept these problems in exchange for owning something beautiful. The controversy centers on value and priorities. Critics argue that no motorcycle, regardless of beauty, justifies accepting chronic unreliability. MV Agusta charges premium prices, often exceeding $30,000 for top models. That money buys exotic appeal and Italian heritage, but it doesn't buy peace of mind or dependable transportation. Owners defend their choices with passion bordering on irrationality. They acknowledge the problems but argue the F4 offers something Japanese competitors can't match. The styling is art, the exhaust note is music, the handling is telepathic, the ownership experience is engaging in ways that perfectly reliable motorcycles never achieve. MV Agusta's financial troubles compound the controversy. The company has faced bankruptcy multiple times, changing ownership repeatedly. Each financial crisis raises questions about parts availability, warranty support, and long-term viability. Buying an MV Agusta means accepting the risk that the company might not exist in 5 years. But here's what makes the F4 fascinating. It shouldn't work. A motorcycle this unreliable from a company this financially unstable shouldn't have customers. Yet the F4 remains in production after 25 years, constantly updated with new variants and special editions. There's clearly a market for beautiful, temperamental Italian motorcycles, even when rational analysis suggests there shouldn't be. The F4 represents everything controversial about exotic motorcycles. It prioritizes emotion over logic, beauty over dependability, and passion over practicality. It asks owners to accept compromises that would be unacceptable in any other product category. And somehow, enough people say yes to keep MV Agusta in business. Number 1. Ducati Desmosedici RR 2007 to 2008. The most controversial motorcycle ever made was also the most exclusive, most expensive, and most impractical. Ducati built a street-legal version of their MotoGP race bike, featuring a 989cc V4 engine, producing 200 horsepower. Only 1,500 units were produced. The base price was $72,500. It was everything wrong with motorcycle manufacturing, and everything right about passion overruling common sense. Ducati developed the Desmosedici RR to celebrate their MotoGP success and prove they could build a production motorcycle with genuine racing technology. The engine used desmodromic valve actuation, titanium connecting rods, and a counter-rotating crankshaft. The electronics were borrowed directly from the race bike. The exhaust system alone cost more than some complete motorcycles. The controversy started before production began. Who was this bike for? Collectors who would never ride it? Track enthusiasts who couldn't afford the maintenance? Wealthy Ducati fans who wanted bragging rights? The answer was all of them and none of them. The Desmosedici RR existed because Ducati could build it, not because anyone needed it. Performance was extraordinary and completely irrelevant. The bike could accelerate from 0 to 60 in under 3 seconds. Top speed exceeded 190 miles per hour, but the riding position was cramped and uncomfortable. The clutch was heavy and unforgiving. The power delivery required expert throttle control. This wasn't a motorcycle for Sunday rides or canyon carving. It was a race bike with license plate brackets. Maintenance costs were absurd. Valve adjustments required specialized tools and intimate knowledge of desmodromic systems. Scheduled service intervals came frequently and expensively. Consumable parts like clutches and brake pads wore quickly under normal riding. Owners reported annual maintenance costs exceeding $10,000 for bikes that rarely accumulated significant mileage. But the real controversy was philosophical. Ducati had built something nobody asked for at a price only wealthy collectors could afford. The Desmosedici RR wasn't transportation or even practical performance. It was a statement about engineering capability and brand prestige. Critics argued this represented everything wrong with modern motorcycle culture. Exclusivity over accessibility, expense over value, and technology over usability. Ducati sold all 1,500 units despite the controversy. Many bikes never accumulated more than delivery mileage. Collectors bought them as investments, correctly predicting values would increase. Today, well-preserved Desmosedici RRs sell for over $100,000. Proving that exclusivity and controversy can be more valuable than practicality. The Desmosedici RR forced uncomfortable questions about motorcycle manufacturing. Should companies build machines this extreme? Should they prioritize accessibility or aspiration? Can engineering excellence justify impracticality? The answers divide the motorcycle community today just as much as they did in 2007. Owners defend the Desmosedici RR as the ultimate expression of motorcycle art. Critics dismiss it as excess masquerading as engineering. Both perspectives are correct, which makes the Desmosedici RR the perfect motorcycle to top this controversial list. It's simultaneously the best and worst thing Ducati ever built, depending entirely on whether you value passion over reason. These 10 motorcycles prove that controversy isn't always about failure. Sometimes it's about challenging conventions, sometimes it's about misreading markets, and sometimes it's about building something so extreme that rational justification becomes impossible. The most controversial motorcycles aren't always the worst ones. Sometimes they're the most interesting. What's the most controversial motorcycle you've ever seen or ridden? Drop your answer in the comments. And if you want to see more content about motorcycles that change the industry, hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching.